Hey Internet, it's Skolo. I'm going to go with my primary form of Internet address rather than the secondary kind, because I don't usually go by the centipede. It's much too ostentatious. The best way to make a habit is by forcing oneself to do it, thus forming it into a habit. That's basic Aristotelian ethics regarding virtue right there. Ooh, you learned something. Or you're a philosophy major and you're thinking what an ostentatious jerk I am. Anyway, what I've been thinking about today mostly, two things. The no true Scotsman fallacy and the state of political discourse in our country today. Yeah, my vlog's generally going to be about big topics because that's what I like talking about. No true Scotsman fallacy is pretty simple. Scotsman reads a newspaper, reads about this murderer in England. He says, oh, no Scotsman would ever be such a murderer. And then the very next day he reads a newspaper about a guy from Aberdeen who was a complete crazy utter serial killer, raped his victims, did every possible nasty thing you can imagine. And then of course this guy commented, well, no true Scotsman would ever, be such a serial killer. You see these things generally when people with a particular ideological background or particular group will say that the people in their group who haven't quite been up to snuff or have done very naughty things, well, they weren't true members. Now, I'm using basic examples, so just because I have to be this specific, if anyone gets butthurt, I'm sorry, it's not personal. Take Christianity, for example. Most Christians nowadays, perfectly decent folk, salt of the earth, gotta love them. But some will argue that those who committed the pogroms, those who, the Catholic creationist who was in charge of the Holocaust, no names need be mentioned, the fact that they were second-class citizenry throughout Europe through most of history up until the Humanist Renaissance and humanism and the Enlightenment, actually. Well, those people weren't true Christians. I bet you dollars to donuts that in their minds, as far as their faith was concerned and how much they truly believed, they were Christian. They probably believed in Jesus Christ our Savior as much as any other Christian nowadays, and that might be part of the reason why they did it, which is sad. Just because you want to disown them does not mean you really can. Southerners in the South were responsible for owning slaves, despite the fact that America was founded, even kind of tongue-in-cheekly, on all men are created equal. So does that make them not American? It makes them American. It makes them bad Americans as far as the ideology and the ideals of our country are based, but that doesn't make them not American, or true Americans. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Here's an example. As you can probably see there, we'll do it that way. I'm a Mason, right? Well, there have been Masons in the past, and probably even nowadays, which have used their fraternal connections wrongly, trying to get other brothers advantages or whatnot. Does that make them good Masons? No. They're very bad Masons because that's not the point. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. But they are still Masons. That reflects poorly on me and any other Mason. Just like the fact that a lot of white Americans owned a lot of black Americans, and that reflects poorly on me, even though I am not personally responsible. I try to be a good American and not a bad American. I try to be a good Mason and not a bad Mason, so this is how it goes. So, the defense by the no true Scotsman fallacy falls flat because it's just a cheap way to disown people who we don't want in our group, even though they are. And that's just how it goes. Now, the state of political discourse in the country. It's not an issue whether you've got liberal bleeding heart liberals or reactionary wingnuts radicals or reactionaries, it doesn't matter which side you've got in office. The problem is that it's now become more of an ideological struggle, where people are just constantly bickering and belittling the other side, where if you disagree with their particular ideology, it's tantamount to treason. It might not even be tantamount, it may be treason. The whole argument that, Obama is a terrorist, which we still hear, Obama is an illegal immigrant, but this is as stupid as saying, Republicans hate our country, or, they're all racists. And, the fact is, politics is about opinion, okay? And I remember back when I was growing up around in the 1980s, late 1980s, there was a game called, it might have been an old game called Truth and Opinion, and the idea was, as a little kid, you were supposed to figure out what's the difference between truth and opinion. It had a bunch of little cards with statements on them, and you were like, are this a statement of truth, or is it a statement of opinion, or fact or opinion? And politics is greatly about opinion, because we don't have sufficient evidence to say that, okay, this form of welfare works, this form does not, this form of governance works, this one does not. And even when you do have scientific evidence, there are ways to spin it, and different ways to look at it and interpret it, because we're trying to delve into the psyche of the human individual and the human social construct, rather than, well, okay, is it fish or fowl? So, to say that someone who supports, let's say, socialized medicine is automatically a capitalist-hating socialist who is trying to destroy our country and the principles it was founded on, that's kind of taking it a little too far, I think. Meanwhile, the people who are saying that those who support a free market are inevitably basically in the pockets of the fat cats and just want all wealth to actually coalesce into an oligarchical group of plutocrats. And that's also overly simplistic, because all these people are acting off of beliefs that they do firmly hold, ideological beliefs they firmly hold and they do think are right. And only a few, unfortunately, can actually argue them from a statement of, from a logical basis. But the more that we should, optimally, the more we realize that our ideologies are based on personal preference, on opinions, on how we were raised, on things that we haven't really thought through, the less zealous we should be in vilifying those who disagree with us. There's no real need to be not zealous in disagreeing. Disagreement is fine. If you don't care, you don't argue. So argumentation is good. Debate is good. But accepting that you might be wrong is key. And accepting that the other guy might believe just as firmly as you do is key. Comes back down to, essentially, tolerance. Tolerance is not the other guy is just as right as you are. Tolerance is the other guy thinks he's just as right as you are. And you accept that. You still think he's wrong as all hell. But you're willing to accept it as long as it doesn't become, obviously harmful. He's not trying to, he's not trying to force you to think the exact same thing he does. And by force, him telling you what he thinks is not forcing you. Him saying you should think the same thing is not forcing you. Him holding a gun up to your child's head and then saying, sign this paper saying you agree with me or your kid gets it, that's forcing, okay? That's a little different. We've just gotten to the point where everyone's got the right to be heard, but everyone somehow forgets the fact that no one's got the right to be listened to. But, what you gonna do? I'm not going to time out this time, but I will admit that these are poorly planned rambles. As time progresses, maybe they'll become more structured, but for the time being, I'm just going to wander about. If you like listening to them, fine. If you don't, fine. It's your life. Now, this has been Scolopendra, and in my dark room, talking to myself. Have a good one, Internet.